In this episode, we're exploring one of the three life model pillars, Pillar 2, Emmanuel Lifestyle. We're covering three things. First, what Emmanuel Lifestyle actually is. Secondly, what happens when our clients lack this experience. And third, how to apply this concept in your mental health practice. If you're new here, I'm Monica with CFT Institute. We train therapists, counselors, and spiritual leaders in a framework approach that combines neuroscience and faith. So first, what is Emmanuel Lifestyle? Well, like I said, it's the second of the three pillars with Life Model. And in Life Model Informed Therapy, we actually have two complete modules just focused on Emmanuel Lifestyle. There's a lot that goes into this, but really, from a very broad conceptualization, it has to do with living in moment by moment awareness of God's presence. So there is a book that's been around for a very long time. Brother Lawrence wrote the Practicing the Presence of God book. It's a very short book, and he was a monk, and he was peeling potatoes in the kitchen, and he would just practice God's presence. And so he gave us this example of what it means to just live in the presence of God, not just speaking at God and giving rote prayers, but actually cultivating a sense of presence on a continual basis. And as humans, that's not necessarily a default way that we interact with God. We really get into our own heads, we get our own agendas, and we get very focused on those things. We get very distracted from cultivating presence. And we're very distracted and focused on things that don't have to do with God. Maybe it's our day-to-day, depending on what our life is and who's involved in it. And it could be things that aren't necessarily bad per se, negative, but things that are good. We have to take care of the children. We have to go to work. We have to have relationships. We have to solve problems. And in that experience, we end up not cultivating a connection, an active and growing connection with God. And then we oftentimes feel very distant from God. And that's problematic because God is a source for us. It's a source of life. If we're living apart from God, what happens to us is we become numb. We live in like maybe a hypo-aroused state or a hyper-aroused state. And we don't really live in that sweet spot of relational connection with God that then cultivates love in our hearts and that we can pour out to others, where we actually learn to live from this beautiful place of our core identity, who we're designed to be in the world, the best parts of ourselves. We live from a place of pain and woundedness and confusion and disconnection. And maybe using ulterior motives for selfish gain as a way of motivation for life, rather than this place of love, of I want to be who God's designed me to be because I love God, because he loves me. We love because he first loved us. So Emmanuel Lifestyle has to do with living from that place of God as a source, love as a main source of the way that we interact with ourselves, God, and others. It's a beautiful place to exist in Emmanuel Lifestyle. And part of what we discover and conversate about in Life Model Informed Therapy is that there is an approach called the Emmanuel approach or Emmanuel healing prayer, where that's a part of the Emmanuel Lifestyle is living from a place of interacting with God in a way that heals our soul, that actually heals the things from the past, that we live in moment by moment awareness of, God, what are you up to in my life? And how do you want to heal the wounds of my heart so that I can live from this fullness of identity? And I had someone even this week say to me, I'm never going to arrive there. I'm never going to become God. So why am I working so hard at healing? What's the use? Why even try to mature? And I love how Life Model talks about it. The concept is, salvation is a gift, but maturity is our job. We're not more valuable because we mature or grow in our healing process or live in a Emmanuel lifestyle. But there is so much more purpose to life when we have matured and we were in a maturing process. There's so much more purpose to our life. There's so much more fulfillment and satisfaction in life when we are actually partnering with God to accomplish His goals for us on this earth. I oftentimes start my conversation or in my conversation with those on our Center for Transformation Institute team saying something like, it's so wonderful to partner with you in something so purposeful. This is purposeful work we're doing because we're coupling with each other with content that we believe is truly transformational for our world. And we're doing our best to get it out there. And we have this sense of God's interactive presence leading the way as our boss, as our CEO. There's nothing more fulfilling than that. So when our clients are not living in a Emmanuel lifestyle, it is very discouraging for them, right? If there is not an active presence of God cultivated in their life, where they know their source and they know what they're alive for, it is very problematic. We can see all manner of presentation in regard to this. Sometimes we see someone who is very discouraged, who's very confused. The directionless don't really have a sense of what life is about. I've had many clients who come from the place of like existential angst, where they don't know why we're even here. There's a sense that life has no meaning, life has no purpose. And depression and suicidality is very commonly a part of that. Nothing means anything. And they spiral into a place of darkness and thinking about life as very, very pointless. It's very sad. And it's hard to reach clients who are like that, who are coming to our sessions saying life has no purpose, life has no meaning, relationships, none of it means anything. It's very hard to reach them. I have seen some things happen with clients like this that are very encouraging, but it takes a lot of effort on our parts as clinicians to join them in that place, to synchronize with their energy level. And a lot of times we don't want to do that because it's discouraging for us as well. We could get lost in that existential hopelessness if we're not careful. There's also clients who are living for other things other than God. They're using idols, things that are distractions in life, to sink themselves into, and they find their source of hope, false hope, in those things. Sometimes those things are self, right? Living for self, living for pleasure, living for hedonistic desires. As a sexual addiction therapist, I oftentimes see clients using their own bodies and their own feeling that comes into their body as an idol in their life. This is the thing I'm very focused on, is my own pleasure. And that sometimes is sexual pleasure. Other times it's food. It can be materialism. It can be success. That I'm finding my purpose in those things. It can be people. I have an addiction to the approval of others. And when clients are focused on those things and not on cultivating God's active presence in their lives, they will come to an end, because we know that these types of things will never actually bring fulfillment. That connection with God and living an Emmanuel lifestyle is actually the only thing that will bring satisfaction and fulfillment. So the last thing I want to discuss here today is, how do we apply this concept in our rooms, in our therapy rooms? As mental health counselors and practitioners of all kinds, when we see these things come into our room, we may want to push them off. We may think judgmentally in our mind, like, why does this person think this way? Why are they experiencing life like this? And we may not want to synchronize with them. Maybe one of the reasons we don't want to synchronize with them is that we judge them. And another reason is because we're scared we may go down that path if we get too far into it because of our own weaknesses and vulnerabilities as humans. We may not feel strong enough. We may go down that road and then be deceived the same way they are. And I think that really encourages us as helping professionals to dig into Emmanuel lifestyle ourselves, to cultivate the active presence of God, whatever that means for us, whether it's through dedicated time each day of being in God's presence, through reading the Bible, through prayer, through meditation, through being in nature, through constantly bringing our own mind back to what it means to live in God's active presence and to inviting God into even the most minimal aspects of our daily lives. When we're doing that on a regular basis and when we're open to the feedback of the Holy Spirit and cultivating community where others will call us out when they see the ways that we aren't actively incorporating God into our life, then we can live from a place of being more powerful in our connection with others. When we're embodying the Spirit of God in our own lives, then what we're bringing to the people we serve is that activated presence and not just a place of our own flesh showing up and trying to do a good job of performing, right? No, we are actually being filled with God's Spirit, and that is what is pouring out of us to the people we serve. And that really is the only way change will happen. What I've noticed in my own life is I can get comfortable or settled into a certain way of being with God and others, and it can almost get stale, like an old wine that I'm pouring into a new wineskin, and then it doesn't really work, right? Because it gets boring, it gets stale, I get into habits that then aren't fresh. And what we know is that when we are cultivating an Emmanuel lifestyle and actively experiencing the presence of God daily, that there is fresh manna, there's fresh and new wine that we're pouring into our wineskins, like the scripture says. That newness is actually our growth point. When we stay connected with God on a daily basis and he's pouring his love into us, he's also showing us, like the Psalm says, search me, O God, and know my heart. See if there's anything in me that makes you sad and lead me in the everlasting way. He's showing us things in our own hearts and minds that are not in alignment with him, that need to be shed off of us, that need to be corrected so that we can then align ourselves anew and in humility connect with God on a moment by moment daily basis. And that is where his love is pouring out of us into others. It's truly him. It's truly him and not us. It's truly that we are vessels of God being poured into on a daily basis and then pouring out and then getting new to pour in and then pouring out. It is, I would say, a very uncomfortable process because we have to constantly be in posture of allowing ourselves to be corrected and aligning ourselves with something outside of ourselves in order to become more like Christ so that we can do this work. We can do this work that he's calling us to do. It's uncomfortable, and it's also the only place to be because there's so much passion, there's so much love, and there's so much purpose in being in this position. So this is Emmanuel Lifestyle. I'm so glad that you tuned in today to listen to to this very important concept. If you want to go deeper with the life model and these 30 plus core concepts from life model informed therapy, we have a full series of trainings available at CFT Institute. You can start exploring for free at cftinstitute.com on our training hub tab. So check that out, and remember, healing spreads when counselors live in joy. We'll see you in the next episode.